the thing that most people miss when they do SEO, which is, who am I doing this for? What is the user searching? Not the keywords user searching. What's the intent?
What does this idea of product-led SEO mean to you?
I started developing this idea of thinking about, what do we build for the user that's in market? And that became what I eventually called product-led SEO. My best consulting gigs all came from interviews where I got rejected.
How you do anything is how you do everything. So how you manage those relationships, even if it doesn't go the way you want, can still drive an incredible outcome.
Email a single customer and do a little survey, and you'll unlock these amazing insights. What I like to do with SEO is create millions or billions of dollars in revenue by thinking of the big product levers.
Behind the scenes, it was a small group of people that were doing everything.
Welcome back to the GTM podcast. It's your host, Scott Barker.
I want to know how this insane growth actually happened.
Hello, go-to-market leaders. If you're like me, you're probably feeling the AI FOMO. You're certainly not alone. And that's why HG Insights created the next generation of sales AI report to calm the FOMO and help you bring AI to your go-to-market teams. It includes a breakdown of the sales AI landscape, the adoption of Gen AI and sales software across different buyer groups, plus an analysis of the top 75 trending sales AI tools. And why HG Insights? Pretty simple. They've been writing market reports for years as the pioneer of tech adoption and market insights. And they are trusted by go-to-market leaders at the likes of Snowflake, Five9, Google Cloud to help improve go-to-market efficiency. So if you're thinking about AI for your sales team but unsure where to start, this free and ungated report has got you covered. Check out the link in the show notes. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome back to the GTM podcast. As always, you've got Scott Barker here. Appreciate you lending us your drums for the next 45 or so minutes. We're going to dive deep into it today. These are some of my favorite episodes. So we get a lot of CEOs, we get a lot of CROs, CMOs, revenue leaders, but every once in a while we bring on a deep technical expert to get a little bit nerdy and really dive into it. So been pumped for this episode. I am joined by Eli Schwartz. Eli, what's up, man? Welcome.
Great to be here, Scott. It's an honor. I've watched and listened to many podcasts, and it's great to be counted amongst one of those amazing guests.
Hell yeah, man. Well, we're lucky to have you. And just quickly, for the audience, so Eli Schwartz is an SEO expert and consultant with more than a decade of experience driving successful SEO and growth programs for both B2B and B2C companies. Worked with companies like Shutterstock, Gusto, WordPress, Quora, Mixpanel, Zendesk, really to help them build and execute a global SEO strategy that dramatically increases their visibility at scale. I've certainly seen the impact that SEO can drive for an organization. Back in the sales hacker days, we really lived and died by our SEO. And we were very fortunate to have Gaetano Donardi, shout out Gaetano, who did some just fantastic work. And people brought it up almost every day when they'd be like, hey, I'd search anything in sales and a sales hacker article would come up. So super important. And it's a timely discussion too, because AI is having a big impact on SEO. But yeah, previous to starting the consulting route, Eli led the SEO team at SurveyMonkey, built organic search from like nearly zero to one of the largest growth drivers at the company, and helped SurveyMonkey's first APAC office and oversaw international SEO, both pre and post IPO. And I would urge you to check out his book, Product-Led SEO, and his newsletter, which is productledseo.com. Man, where to start? I think let's just level set. What does this idea of product-led SEO mean to you?
So I sort of stumbled upon it accidentally, in my career. So I was at SurveyMonkey. I was there for a couple of years, and I got bored, and I was looking for a new challenge because I I built our SEO. We started at zero. The only thing they were visible for was the brand, maybe a couple survey terms. Wasn't really driving a lot of revenue. And I got bored and I was looking for a new challenge, but it was a good gig. So I think they don't want to like leave and make less money. And that's how the APAC thing came into being. I liked international. I love buyer personas. I love understanding, how different people culturally behave as, customers. Like I like it from a marketing angle. And I got this idea in my head I should move to Asia, and that was going to be my next thing. So it took a while. I got to Asia. I was fortunate. SurveyMonkey let me start the Asia office, and I had got to stay with the company. And then I came back, and SEO had been completely destroyed. So we went from, I built it up to 100 or so million per year in revenue, and it was struggling. And I needed to rebuild it. But this time I was going to rebuild it knowing what I'd done in the past and with budget and with a team. And I crystallized this framework of it being focused on a product, because what the SEO team had been doing while I was out of SEO was writing a lot of content. So we staffed up this content team. It's a B2B company, so they write a lot of content about the space, but it was speaking to people that needed to understand surveys, but it wasn't speaking to survey creators, which are the people that pay SurveyMonkey for the software. It's a SaaS. And I started developing this idea of thinking about what do we build for the user that's in market. And I termed it product, but it doesn't really have to be a product. And that became what I eventually called Product-Led SEO. So it's the asset, it's the thing that you're creating for the search user. So in my book, I talk about Zillow. So what Zillow, you're in Canada, so I don't know if you have Zillow there, but for anybody in America or Canada now, I know, you have Zillow, which is home valuations. That is an SEO product. The only way you find that product, unless you are the kind of person that goes to Zillow.com and just puts in a bunch of addresses just as, because you're curious, is you Google the address that you just drove by. And that happens to me all the time. Like I'm in the Bay Area and I'm, driving by the beach. I'm like, that's a really nice house. I'd like to know how much that cost. I just put that address in. That is an SEO product. They created that product for the SEO user. The only way they're going to bring traffic to that page is with the SEO. They're not going to pay for traffic to a single address. There's probably very few addresses in America that are worth buying traffic to. So that's the idea of building product around the SEO user. And then from there, I developed this, again, it's a framework of what's the product? How do you bring users to it? What are the users supposed to do on this product? Do you build links to it? Do you need to build links to it? Where does it link out to? And that's the way I think of product-led SEO. And now, a common question I get when I talk to potential companies is, well, there is no product for us when you talk about SEO in this way. To which I would typically respond, if there is no product that you can build for a user, maybe don't do SEO.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting. And that Zillow example really helped me kind of grasp it. So you're building a product that sits on top of whatever product or service that you actually offer. It's a free product that derives value to the end consumer that you don't have to spend a bunch of time, eyeballs, content driving people to. They're going to discover it themselves. Do you have another example with a company that you've worked with?
Oh, tons. I mean, I skipped right to Zillow, which is a company I've never touched. But I did this at SurveyMonkey. So that for SurveyMonkey was the templates. So we spent all this money on creating content. The content didn't convert. The content got downloads. It got page views. The conversions came through templates. So if I'm looking for a customer satisfaction template, that is my Google query I use. I want to create a survey. I have told you in my intent, I want to create a survey. Now, I actually came up with this idea a little bit before I worked with SurveyMonkey on the templates. And again, total accident. And it's a story I've written on my newsletter, which you've already plugged. Thank you. I met the founder of Zapier when Zapier had just finished YC. So a coworker of mine at SurveyMonkey was a partner at YC, asked me to go to lunch with the founder of Zapier and talk to him about SEO. And as I wrote about this newsletter, the real reason I went to go meet the founder of Zapier was because they had a blog post, which sort of annoyed me. It was a blog post about the top 10 survey tools. And when you Googled the term survey tools, you found Zapier and you didn't find SurveyMonkey at number one. So that annoyed me. So I wanted to go talk to him, meet him, just have lunch and learn more about what they were doing and figure out how they got this blog post to rank number one. In the process of meeting him and having this conversation about SEO, together we stumbled upon what became Zapier's $1 billion idea, which is pairing software with software. So at the time, many of the pairings that they have on their site now, and even then, didn't exist. So there was no way to plug Salesforce together with Gmail. There was no way to plug Gmail with HubSpot. The only way you were going to do that is with Zapier. So what they did is we came up with this idea, and this is where we created lots and lots of pages, is you create a page for Gmail plus HubSpot, Gmail plus Salesforce. Anybody looking for that term, it's a very tail term, is looking for precisely that product. And then Zapier can say, oh, you're looking to plug Gmail and Salesforce together. You do that with Zapier. So that is product-led SEO. So that it took a really long time. It probably took 2 years before it even started generating traffic, very tail traffic. But then what happens is, just like Zillow, they've created a category. So now if you're like, wow, I found that Gmail plus Salesforce thing, I wonder if Gmail plugs in together with some other tool that I'm using right now. I wonder if there's a way to bring, I don't know if you ever did this with Sales Hacker, but partner Sales Hacker with Salesforce, even though it's not an official partnership. There's Zapier. So they create a category. And the amazing thing about creating a category in search is you become that brand. So even today, if you look at any address in America or Canada, Zillow is number one. They are automatically number one because they've created that product. They created the category. Same goes with TripAdvisor. TripAdvisor, again, has created that category with their SEO product. Zapier created that product with their SEO product. So those are the other two examples that I personally worked on. The Zillow one is just the easiest one to understand.
Mm-hmm. I like it. And so this is going to be kind of broadly taking what you're saying and trying to simplify it. But are you saying then gone are the days of listicles and blog pieces that are more around like what your product does, and it's more about templates, frameworks, almost like teaching them how to solve the problem without you, and then that will, along that journey, they'll be like, oh, there's an easier way to do this.
It really comes back to the thing that most people miss when they do SEO, which is, who am I doing this for? And I know, there are a lot of people in sales that listen to this podcast, and sometimes salespeople have to put up with marketers creating personas. And honestly, I think they're some of the dumbest things I've ever seen. Let's blame product marketers specifically. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen them come up with. And when I consult with companies and they train me on it, and they're like, look, this is Donna. This is, she is, 60 years old and she drives a Honda. Literally has nothing to do with the buyer's journey. But I think there is a need for developing some sort of persona. So now you can say, who am I creating this for? So if your audience is Gen Z, and I consulted with Tinder, and the audience was Gen Z, and even more than that, what Tinder wanted to acquire with SEO was Gen Z females. So anything we wanted to do to drive SEO revenue, it had to be for what a Gen Z female would be searching, not just searching, but then coming into Tinder and then creating an account. And then more importantly, because this is an investment, upgrading and paying Tinder. So when it comes down to is, if you're doing SEO, you have to do it with a purpose. Really understand, why is it that you're trying to acquire this user? So if you're writing a random listicle, yes, you can generate traffic. And I look at that kind of stuff as more entertainment. Like, we all see it. You see it in Google Discover, you see it on social media, and you're like, oh, that's an interesting article. You have no idea who wrote it, and it doesn't benefit the company who wrote it, unless it's an advertising model where you read some media, you saw an ad, maybe they generated a click, maybe they didn't generate a click, but you're one of those people and there's a CPM purpose for it. But for a SaaS company or a service company that needs to convert somebody from that traffic, writing random listicles doesn't really matter. And even more than that, and I know we need to dive into AI, this is precisely where AI is going to disrupt that entire SEO model. So Google, ChatGPT, whatever it's going to be, is going to write those listicles for you. Where do you want to go on vacation? What's the best beach hotel in Miami? That is a term that in the past a travel site might have wanted to optimize and build some content around. That simple term is something that Google can easily tell you, these are the best beach hotels. And that's top of funnel. From there, you're going to drill into mid-funnel, which is where I think SEO should be, because now you can do purposeful, intentful SEO optimization for those people that want to understand, oh, what is the difference between South Beach and Miami Beach? That is more mid-funnel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's dive in there. So top of funnel is kind of going away because we were looking at a new CRM that was for VCs, and first thing I did was go to ChatGPT, and I think this is a pretty common way for buyers to discover and do their own research before. ChatGPT gives me a list of 10. I then narrow that list to 5. I do my own research. I then talk to people I know, and then I'm going and what would be helpful is if I type in affinity, and the differences between affinity and the other 4 that I have just identified are easily there for me, because I don't, ChatGPT doesn't go that far. It won't spit out very good answers when you ask what are the differences between X and Y. So is that a good place to start? Just get ahead of that article? Is that one of the first articles you should be writing as like a new company?
Yeah. If you are competing with Affinity, I would write that article of you versus Affinity. I would also write about features. Now, SaaS is a tough place to really do SEO because I don't know that there's a ton you can do when you're dividing up all those different features. They're not really different intents. So I worked with a payroll services company. They focused a lot on SEO landing pages, but it's hard to really divide up that SEO intent. There's no real difference between payroll services in California and payroll services in New York. So making a payroll services New York page and making a payroll services California page doesn't matter. And this payroll company did one other thing, which is, again, a big mistake that I think people do in their SEO journeys, which is when you are in a two-sided marketplace like payroll. So in payroll, there is the HR or the employer who is paying for the service. And then there's an employee who is being paid by the service. So they are obviously a participant in this marketplace. Now, if you look at any keyword research tool and looking around payroll terms, most of the search traffic is obviously on the employee. How much do I get paid? What are my taxes? What is Social Security? What is a 401k? Lots and lots of traffic there. Now, if you're trying to monetize the employer and the HR team who pays you, building content about what are state taxes in California, what is a 401k, does nothing for you. You've provided, again, going back to our listicle example, you provided free information for a non-buyer. So really understanding who it is that you've created this content for is important because you know what you're trying to do with this. So if you are in one of these two-sided marketplaces, you're doing SEO for that other side of the marketplace, which might mean there isn't a lot of SEO to do if there's not a lot of ways to slice up what you're doing. So again, going back to what I did at SurveyMonkey, it's a survey, right? There are not a lot of ways to slice survey. There are no more synonyms. Like early on in SEO, there were synonyms. So a survey was a questionnaire. So some people search survey. We'll rank number 1. If you search questionnaire, we did not rank number 1. Now Google has LLMs. They don't even need synonyms. They write the content themselves. So synonyms aren't a thing anymore. So if we're looking at a survey software, it's kind of basically the same thing, regardless of who it's for. So there's not a lot of SEO to do just on that feature. Now, where we were able to do SEO was on the templates. So that's appealing to different search terms and different use cases. But if you're a typical SaaS, not a lot you can do. Consulted with Mixpanel early on in my consulting career. It's an analytics tool. There's not a lot of ways to slice analytics tools. Yes, you can build a lot of content around some of the meanings and terms in analytics, but those aren't conversion terms. So if I want to know what a page view is, great, I define it, but how many people searching that term and reading about page views are in market and are now going to follow that funnel into purchasing Mixpanel, which is the reason you have created that SEO process?
That makes sense. I want to circle back to the AI search. And, you kind of alluded to, top of the funnel going away. Is there a new thinking around, call it AI model optimization where you can influence, like, let's say the example I gave, the top 10 CRMs, and you're like, well, we're not in it. So we don't even have a player in the game right now. Is there ways to impact that? Or is it, you have to do G2, you have to have content? Is it just pulling, like, who has the most eyeballs out there?
Yeah, that's a complex question because so first of all, I don't know that a website itself, not a brand, necessarily needs to be in those AI overviews, because if you are at some of the, Google now started linking out. Perplexity, I think, is always linked out. ChatGPT now has SearchGPT, which links out. I don't know that you necessarily need to be there, because the point of the AI overview, whoever it's coming from, is to give an overview. And if you're linking out, it hasn't really done what it's supposed to do. So I don't know that I care so much to get in there, because that basically means my content was stolen and no one's going to click anyways. Now, as far as showing up, that's where the complex question comes in. It's actually a brand question and not an SEO question. So what a lot of these things do is they're summarizing the top results on sort of what they perceive to be the primary search query. So you might do a really long query to whatever it is. Give me a list of the top 10 CRM tools that I could use for VCs. Google, ChatGPT is going to try to distill that down to search query, and it's basically going to give you that list of what would be in the top 10 ranking results if they were pulling in the top 10 ranking results. So now this is the complexity part. Obviously, spam plays a role. So if we know how to get into the top 10, you can create a bunch of content, and now you're automatically in the top 10. And then if people are writing content with AI, it's just this, this feedback loop where now you're top 10, you don't deserve to be there. So it's a little bit more complex than that, because they want to fight back on spam. So really it becomes a branding exercise. So yes, showing up on something like G2, getting into traditional media as being a top 10, I'd say I have not seen that many examples of things that didn't deserve to be on those top lists. Again, on tail things there are, but on big things like top CRM tools, I don't think you're going to find a startup there that really doesn't deserve to be there. At least I haven't seen it yet. So that's where, yes, I think you do want to show up in those in those overviews, because that's top of funnel. And you need to get into that mid-funnel journey. If you're not showing up there, I do think there's branding to be done rather than just typical SEO.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then I think you can break apart the AI conversation into two sort of pillars, right? There's AI search, which we talked about, but then there's also AI content creation. I could be a founder listening to this, and I'm like, okay, great. Well, I just hired my first marketer. I'm going to get her to write a blog template comparing to, our biggest competitor. And then we're going to do that, use AI to spit out hundreds of those. And then boom, magically we're going to rank for all of these things. What words of wisdom or pitfalls would you tell founders who are tempted by a strategy like that?
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever, because AI is a writing tool, just like a computer is a tool to write content. Just like prior to AI content creation, you went to Upwork or Fiverr and you found someone to write. So now AI is just a little bit cheaper. As long as you're doing that thing where you're writing towards the right audience. So if you are mainstream media and you're writing articles and you've decided that you now no longer need to employ journalists and you'll use AI, I don't think that would be a very good idea, because people are coming to you because of the quality of your journalists. If you're an e-commerce site and you used to hire someone on Fiverr to write product descriptions of the products that you have, and you're not using, and this is, again, some e-commerce sites mess this up, you don't need to change the e-commerce, the product descriptions that come from the distributor or from the product manufacturer. That's not SEO. Changing synonyms is not SEO. But let's say it's your own product, you don't have product descriptions. So maybe 3 years ago, you hired someone on Fiverr to describe your product and write the product features. Now you can use AI. There's no difference there. It really doesn't matter. That's not the content you need. If you now look at AI as, well, here's an opportunity to write 1,000 listicles for cheap. I don't think you needed 5 listicles, so you're scaling it up to 1,000. So I'd say that using AI is not the issue. It's the content you're creating. So if you didn't need to create the content, then you're using AI to create content you didn't need to create. If you do need to create the content, and using AI to create the content. And it lacks that emotion. It lacks that depth. Again, thinking about like mainstream media, it lacks what the user reader came to get. That's the issue. So AI is not the issue. It's really the intent and purpose of the content creation. And is it SEO to begin with?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen an example where that has worked, where they were intentional around using AI to create content? They thought about, okay, this is the right end user. We're speaking their language. And then they just used it to maybe expand upon their reach. Have you seen good examples of that?
I don't think it expands upon the reach. It just improves the output. So I think people conflate this entire idea of AI is bad. If it's AI created content, it's bad. And AI assistance has been around for a really long time. So if you've done a search in Google for the last 15 years and you misspelled it, Google used AI to assist you in writing it better. For the last few years, in Gmail, Google assisted me in writing better. It just auto-completed sentences I was writing. That's AI. I've been using Grammarly for the last year to write my newsletter. Grammarly helps me reword sentences using AI. I wrote the sentence. It added some words in. It told me where I needed the comma. That's AI. Now, you're creating content. If you think you can create an entire high-quality blog with just AI prompts, that's the mistake. If you can say, I've developed this idea that I would like to write about, but I'm not so good at putting it together, and you get AI to give you the rough draft, there was absolutely no issue with that if there was a reason for creating that content at all. So I'm working with a site, an affiliate site. They write a lot of content. Their AI content that they just sort of half-ass by like prompting it doesn't do well at all because it's half-assed. The content they write where they take in the products that they are reviewing and they are using AI to improve their scale and improve their speed, yes, it's working even better because their speed and their scale is totally improved. There's a company I'm advising. I don't want to plug it because I'm advising and I have equity in them, but they are there's this hybrid between like human written content and AI content. And that I think is what's missing. I think that many people have like, oh, AI is great. I'm going to fire my content team. You shouldn't do that. What you need to do is mix it and say, I need to produce a high volume of AI content, but I now have the humans who are going to edit my high volume of content. So don't fire the content team and just use AI. You just need to change the processes and change the flow. And that this company I'm advising, that's what they do. They just sort of, they have the Upwork and then they have the humans.
Yeah. Yeah. But augmentation, it feels like across the board, whatever role you're using AI, it's about augmenting the work that you're doing versus replacing it. So at the beginning of this conversation, you alluded to a framework where you came back, and you kind of had this epiphany after APAC and you're like, okay, I got to go redo this, but now I'm going to do this with this framework. Can you break down that framework a little bit for us?
Yeah. So it's essentially I came back and I got the team back, the SEO team back, and they want to give me a lot more money. And they said, okay, if we give you 3 more employees, can you drive more SEO? And that's where I started developing like, well, where does the money go? How should I think of where to spend the money? And that's where I started this buyer journey process. So it really starts with, what am I doing? Who am I building this for? What is the user searching? Not the keywords the user searching. What's the intent? What are they trying to get out of this? And then from there, I can ideate on what I might create. And then on ideating on what I create, then I can start building a product plan. That's why, again, I developed into Product-Led SEO. I had sort of a happy accident that helped me call this Product-Led SEO and help me think about this as a product team, which is when I came back, I was on a marketing team. And then my manager left. So I didn't have a marketing manager, and the chief product officer picked up my SEO team and he put me on. I now joined the product team. So I went from marketing to product, and chief product officer calls me into an urgent meeting, says, we need a chat. And I was like, never a good Slack message to get. And we sit down and he's like, I was going through your comp. And I was like, well, this is really not the conversation I want to have. He said, you are marketing manager 5 or whatever level I'm at. He's like, but I'm a product person. I can't have marketers on my team. So I've laddered you over to product manager 5, and it looks like we're underpaying you for that. So just wanted to let you know, and that's why it's urgent, because you're getting paid today and your salary has been increased retroactively since you've been on my team.
Hell yeah.
So that was like my whoa.
Goes from the worst conversation to the best real fast.
Exactly. So I was like, wait a second, I'm doing the exact same job, but now I'm a product manager. So that was sort of my SEO is product. SEO has to be product. And now I also got more controls. So as a product manager, suddenly I went from going as a marketer to a product person and saying, could you pretty please ask an engineer to do this thing for us? It's really important to SEO. So now I'm a product manager and an engineer says, I'm at your whim. I have time assigned for you to tell me what to do. And I was like, wow, this is great. And the same thing happened on all these other teams. So I went from being horizontal with the content team where we had similar goals and I needed to do stuff when we were competing, to all of a sudden the content team says, oh, you're a product manager. I have this amount of time each week to service whatever you need. And the same with design. So I was like, this is where SEO should be. So that's also part of where the framework's developed of it's not just around content that I'm going to create. It's really about the user and what are all the things I need to do to build this together and thinking of SEO as a product. So going back to that, so I identify the user, identify what it is I need to create for that user, and then I start identifying the product roadmap to create that thing for the user. And it's not an overnight thing. It's not like, here's a user. This is Donna who drives a Honda. I'm going to write this blog post and then we ship it and we're done. It's really, this is the user. This is, a principal. Like when I was a SurveyMonkey, this is a principal. They're going to need a survey once a month, ask these questions. It's going to be a tracking survey. What is it that this person would look for? Do we even have this? Is this a template that we have? Is this a service that we can do? And how do we frame this to them? Maybe is their concern price? If their concern isn't price, why would we talk about price? And really building that all together and then making those longer term product decisions that at the end of the year, we could say we've built all these things and we acquired all these principles. That's what we tried to do. So that essentially is the framework in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. I love these happy accidents that sometimes happen. Now, the companies you advise for, is that one of the pieces of advice you give, that you should have SEO sit under product versus marketing?
It's hard because I find that with companies, they who sits under you is it goes to your ego. So if someone's a marketer and they have SEO sitting under them and me saying they shouldn't really sit under you, they're better on their product. Yeah, they leave the Zoom. That's it. It's something I advise senior leaders who can make those decisions. So like a CEO or chief product officer can make those decisions. I would say my best consulting engagements are with growth teams. So like a VP of growth or a chief growth officer, because they have both. They have product and marketing that sits under them, and we can do everything. When I worked just with marketing teams, I find that there are roadblocks that just we can't get past because they don't have they're not equipped to go do that. So if I'll work with a marketing team and I'll say this is something we need to scale over and over, which means we need a CMS. And they say, I don't even know who to ask to give us a CMS. Or if I say we need to make this page not use this script, they're like, I don't even know who to ask. I don't even know how to put that into words. Whereas if I'm on a product team, that's what they do. They work with engineers, they figure it out. So it's something I advise, but I don't really have a lot of control over making it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. You have just a better understanding and you're closer to new features, functionality that is coming down the road. And it almost becomes your job to think of like a PLG motion that doesn't have to, we've been talking about product-led SEO, but it doesn't have to be your product that is product-led growth. You can create a sub-product that can drive that growth. And I remember banging my head at Outreach thinking about this exact problem for a long time, because I was very sure we should have some sort of PLG motion, but our product just wasn't set up for it, and nor did we want to do that. But I was like, but we can get halfway there. Like, what if we created like a template library or these things that they mirrored what the freemium and PLG motion does, but it's through valued content, templates, etc. So that's super cool. It makes complete sense to me, and I think it's something anyone should think about if they're thinking what a PLG motion could look like for their SaaS business. Well, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Maybe you can come up with a sub-product.
Absolutely. And I'd say that's the biggest mistake people make with SEO, which is having a diminished understanding of what SEO can accomplish for them. So the way most people think of SEO is content, just write a large scale of content. So when your SEO motion is write a lot of content, of course you think AI can replace it because I did SEO before with a human and now AI does it free and faster. So yes, AI SEO is replaced by that. The other mistake people make when they think of SEO is they think of it as a pure optimization effort, which is, I've got this website. Would you come in and optimize it for me? Like paint it, just, fix the title tag on my homepage, make it better technically. And none of those things are going to do what I like to do with SEO, which is create millions or billions of dollars in revenue by thinking of the big product levers. Like a smaller engagement I had, which along those lines, is I worked with Coinbase. At Coinbase, they wrote a lot of content, but that's not SEO. And again, there's diminishing returns on content once you've written the same piece of content. So writing 3 pieces of Bitcoin content a day isn't going to drive more users to Coinbase. What drove more users to Coinbase was people discovering the prices of cryptos, which is a Googling whatever crypto, and you see a pricing page. So that's where we put our SEO effort. How do we scale that? How do we scale a pricing page? Because that's the best entrance into understanding the crypto ecosystem and wanting to become a Coinbase user. So that, again, that's consumer, a lot easier to do it on consumer. When I work with e-commerce, again, a lot easier. It's really opening up the catalog, building category pages, understanding how the users are going to go through the journey. With software, with B2B, a little bit harder, but sometimes there are angles. So it's the deep understanding of the user's process. And many times a company has not thought of that user. They have not thought of that top of funnel user journey. They think of only the bottom of the funnel. And when you come to bottom of the funnel, you plateau very, very quickly on SEO and SEO content.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Yeah. The Coinbase example, like a real-time coin tracker that is right on Coinbase. People are going to interact with that maybe every day. And then, of course, once they find one, they're like, ooh, I really like this coin. That leads me naturally to setting up a Coinbase account. And yeah.
Well, I've got
Again,
another
going
one
back
for
to
you
the
that really
sales.
crystallizes for this. So I worked with WordPress. This is part of my understanding of where product and marketing sort of run into walls. I worked with WordPress, WordPress.com, which is a fascinating company. Automatic is the parent company of WordPress. They invented the entire internet. So they invented WordPress.
It's a bold claim.
Oh, it absolutely is. So if you're not a WordPress user, check it out. They invented WordPress, which is, I think, the CMS used. I don't know what it is now, but when I was with WordPress, it was used by 60% of all websites in the world. So they invented that. Wow. They have a tool or a company or a product called WooCommerce, which, again, at the time, I don't know what it is today, has more e-commerce sites on WooCommerce than Shopify. But if you look at the revenues for WooCommerce versus Shopify, Shopify obviously blows them out of the water. That's the product. So I worked with WordPress, fascinating. I worked with the marketing team. The marketing team had very little control of product. WordPress was also historically a distributed company, so they had people all over. That may have also contributed to their lack of ability to sort of really build these massive products. They also had a survey tool, which was just as old as SurveyMonkey, but you never heard of it because they never really actualized it. It was called PollDaddy. Now it's called Crowd something. So the thing that WordPress was focused on from an SEO standpoint was writing a lot of content. They wanted to be better on design. So they write a lot of better design content. When I looked at WordPress's search footprint, to me, first of all, it's WordPress. It means massive. So to me, the most important thing that they could create visibility on was WordPress templates. So we focused our SEO efforts on building out as many template libraries. And if you're not familiar with WordPress, most of the templates are created by people not affiliated with WordPress at all. They're just designers and they build templates and then upload them onto their own websites. So the more effort we put into WordPress templates, if you buy a WordPress template, if you use a WordPress template, you automatically have to use it on a WordPress site. And that means you're in the journey. So we built an entire channel out of optimizing WordPress templates that other people had created rather than focus on the terms, the real top of funnel terms like design a real estate realtor's website or design a doctor's office website. Yes, those are big, sexy terms, but that's not where those weren't in the buyer's journey. So really understand that journey. You can create an entire channel for the user that no one else is doing. And if you've done it like, again, Zillow, you can own that category forever. If you do it like WordPress, they didn't capitalize on it, and we capitalized on it, and we owned it.
Yeah. I don't know if the listeners are getting their gears turning, but this is getting my gears turning for sure. You can see this. It almost becomes so obvious things that you could create. Like I think back to like sales engagement software and like how cool would it be if Outreach Salesloft created like a real-time email template library of like, here are the most like up to date, here are the best performing templates in the entire Outreach library. They're de-anonymized, they do the work to scrub it. And then you could go and like, if you're a BDR, you could look at that every single day, or you're a BDR manager of like, okay, what sequences should we be using? These are the ones that are working. These ones aren't working. And even like CRM, it's like, what are the new dynamic fields being created on a daily basis that people would be interested in? It's super cool. I love it. It comes down largely just to like creativity, hey? That must be what you kind of love about it.
Oh, I absolutely love it. Again, I love the people part of it, understanding the users and how they're going to interact with this, and then landing on something and then building it from scratch. So those are my favorite sort of engagements where it hasn't been done before for that user. And now I'm working with a great team. I worked with Tinder in creating a product for that user who they'd never done SEO before. Again, SurveyMonkey had never done that before. That when I started SurveyMonkey, they had templates, but the only way you could see the templates was if you logged in and created an account, and then like in your account you had these templates. Being able to expose these things publicly and build a channel out of it, like that's what I love, because it's for the user. It's not like, oh, we have this content. We are, Consumer Reports, which is a website that's gated. They have good content, but like, oh, I ungated the content. It's great. Look at all this traffic. No, we built something that didn't exist before, and you drive all this traffic, while the thing that did exist is still gated because that's your product.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. So I want to shift gears a little bit. So we love helping people, scale and grow their businesses, but we also love helping people scale and grow their careers. And I think when I look at your background, and I think even, listeners, they've heard the brands that you're you're working with and associated with. And something that you're pretty open with is you got rejected from jobs at some of the best FANG companies, out there, but then have since turned around and turned that into hundreds and hundreds of thousands in consulting. And I think a lot of people are exploring that territory right now. I think it's an interesting market. I know incredibly talented people that are having a tough time finding their next gig, but they have so much inherent value that they've accrued over the years. And, maybe they're dipping their toes into consulting. They're thinking about it. Maybe they're advising a handful of companies. How did you make that transition successfully? And how do you advise folks that might be looking at that as a path forward?
Yeah. So it's something I'm very passionate about, because I'm passionate about people's careers in general. So I think the most important thing to be successful as an advisor is business development and sales. So there's so many smart people out there. They're amazing operators, but they're not able to consistently fill their own pipeline and close deals. And that's the thing that I see people do. And then they struggle, and then they go back to full-time work. Being an advisor means that you're able to do that you want to do that. And that is a part of what you're going to do as a job. It's not just, I'm a great operator, I don't deserve to have a boss, I should be my own boss. It's really, I want to build a business. And it's a commitment to building an advisory business, figuring out how to do the business development, continuously close deals, and use those deals you close to get more deals. Because again, there are so many great operators. I work with operators that are so much smarter than me at doing this, but they have jobs because that they don't want to do that business development part. I like the business development part. I love meeting people, and I love understanding, what I could do for companies and figuring out how to, partner with them and close deals. And that's the thing that I enjoy. And because I enjoy it, I'm able to continue doing this. And if I didn't, there's a luck factor, and eventually that luck runs out. And I've seen advisors who, Google hires them as an advisor, but when Google loses that budget, they don't have anything else in the pipeline. They have to go back to full-time work. So anybody that's considering being an advisor, that's the thing you can practice now, which is closing deals. Like, do it for free. Like, if you meet someone and you can help them, convince them to let you help them. It maybe you're restricted by your day job, you can't take on advisory work, but convince them to let you help them for free, because that's the muscle you need to exercise. So many operators, especially if they're not in sales. So if you're a marketer or a product person and you're not in sales, this is a muscle you need to build and exercise on closing deals. And I would say I got lucky because going back to that coworker that introduced me to the founder of Zapier, I got lucky in that he had introduced me to some other companies, and some of those companies ended up being really big brands. And just like anything, there's social proof. So I worked with big brands. So then I had a story to tell about big brands, and other brands follow that. The other thing is that I would say, I don't think I've ever shared this before on a podcast. My best consulting gigs all came from interviews where I got rejected. So I interviewed at, I'd say the one that probably spun off the most consulting engagements was LinkedIn. I interviewed at LinkedIn. I really, really liked the role. This is, I think, 8-9 years ago. I really liked the role, and I got rejected. And I was super disappointed. I liked this role at LinkedIn, and I was disappointed, and I moved on. A couple people I'd interviewed with at LinkedIn had been impressed by my background. And every time someone had posted on LinkedIn, hey, I'm looking for an SEO advisor for my startup, the two people that had interviewed me would just tag me. And those spun into like some huge brands I've worked at because some of their past LinkedIn coworkers went and worked at, became CMO at big brands. So that happened from a LinkedIn interview, which I was disappointed to get. I interviewed at Google a couple of times. Same exact thing happened. So some of the people I'd interviewed with were impressed by what I'd said about SEO, thought that I knew what I was talking about, had voted to hire someone else, or maybe they'd voted to hire me. I think at Google has to be unanimous, but they didn't hire me, but they introduced me to other people. So, and if you're looking to get into advisory, start interviewing for jobs, and it's a great way to network because you'll meet people that know what you're doing. But that was also one of the best unlocks, and it was completely unintentional.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Great advice in general, whether it's interviews or a deal that doesn't go your way. It's kind of like how you do anything is how you do everything. So how you manage those relationships, even if it doesn't go the way you want, can still drive an incredible outcome. I know for us, like when we're out there fundraising, some of the best connections and investors we've got is from someone doing a bunch of diligence, passing for whatever reason, we just don't fit their, internal model, but then they'll make, 3 introductions, and bam, that's actually a better outcome than, just landing the one. So that's great advice. And I hear
you have to take
on
the long view there, of course.
For sure. Always. Long game's the only game worth playing, for sure.
Yeah.
And I hear you on, if you're going into business for self, whatever you're doing, know that you're turning yourself into a salesperson, and you need to get very comfortable doing that. I have a buddy who's a great artist, and I was catching up with him the other week. He does oil paintings. That's his job, and he's incredibly talented, and he's been able to make it work. And it's hard to, be a successful artist. And he's like, it's all sales, and there's people way more talented than me, but I just kind of learned the game, and I prioritize networking, sales, BD more than most artists, and that gives me, my edge. So whatever you're doing, that is a truth. Going a little deeper on that, I've also found it's important to kind of paint yourself as, I help with X. I think if you went out and you're like, hey, because you have incredible marketing chops across the board, but if you went and wanted to do just marketing consulting, you're getting into these soupy waters that's much more competitive versus picking one thing that you're world class at and being like, no, I do this. I am product-led SEO guy, and I'm going to teach you how to do this. Because I think I see a lot of folks that are like, anything. I've been a CRO, so like anything on the revenue side, I'll help with. Everything from ICP to buyer personas to creating an outbound strategy, inbound strategy, all this, and then they don't know when to find you. How important has that been sort of in your journey?
That has been the most important. So that's the other thing I tell people when they ask me about becoming a growth advisor, that they need to find a very particular niche. And say that over and over again. And for me, it wasn't product-led SEO, it was SurveyMonkey. So I was out there. Again, I was very fortunate in that SurveyMonkey allowed me to have a platform. So they allowed me to write. So I wrote on SEO blogs. They allowed me to speak. they never stopped me from doing anything. I worked with great people there. So like I did this podcast on Y Combinator, which is still one of the most popular podcasts I've ever done. Same podcast that Elon Musk was a guest on. They had like some amazing guests, and then they had like Eli Schwartz is talking about SEO. So that podcast really allowed me to say, this is what I do at SurveyMonkey. And people reached out and say, hey, I heard what you did at SurveyMonkey. Can you do SurveyMonkey for us? So it wasn't that I heard you do SEO. You sound like you know SEO. I was like, no, I see SurveyMonkey. It's a public company. This is what you said you've done. I'm paying you to do exactly that. And that brought in the brands. And then that brings another brand. So then I can come in and say, okay, I did Tinder. Can you do Tinder for us? And I think that's so important for anybody being growth advisors, because I don't have formal case studies. You need to have these stories and say, I've done this, pay me and I'll do this exact same thing. And one parallel, and I'd say one thing people really don't understand is how to price, and they underprice. And that's because they're not looking at the entire value of what they're bringing. And if they want like a high bar on what pricing might look like, you think about all the lobbyists on retainer for all these big tech companies. They're there for when the bad stuff happens. Like TikTok fired their lobbyist because TikTok got themselves banned. And like, you were there. We were paying you tens of millions of dollars a month in retainer to make sure this never happened, and you didn't do it. So they fired lobbyists. I don't know what will happen now. They need a new lobbyist and they're kind of screwed. But like, that's the idea, is they're there to do one specific thing, and that's the high watermark. So you can say, whatever you're being a growth advisor, I did this exact thing for this company. I brought them $1 billion. What will you pay me to bring me this same $1 billion? Instead of, again, the way most growth advisors think is, well, at my day job, I made $250 an hour, so I'm going to charge $450 an hour to do this engagement. That's the wrong way of thinking about it. So yes, having those exact stories, having a very specific niche is so important. And when I talk to growth advisors that want to do this, I try to get them to crystallize that one thing. The easiest thing for anybody being a growth advisor to really come up with, if they have not done this before, is to say, this is what I did at this company. So I worked at Uber. So now you can say, I worked at Uber and I helped Uber do their IPO and make billions of dollars. That's not true. No one did. But like, if you have that story, then people want to start hiring you for that. I was once in a presentation and I heard someone talking about A/B testing at a massive public company. Like, so I did this test on the homepage. And I'm like, there's no way this single person alone did that one person test on the homepage. Like, they had probably had to go through multiple committees. The CEO weighed in on it. But it doesn't matter. I'm sure people in the audience were like, wow, I'm sort of in the same industry. I want to hire you to do the exact same thing. So having those stories, so important. Even if you weren't an exact participant in that story, you're not lying. You're just, you want to emulate Apple, I bring you Apple. You want to emulate Uber, I bring you Uber. You're in a food space, I understand Yelp. So like, really having that is so important.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic advice. And hopefully that gets the gears turning for some folks that might be looking into that path. It is a great path. I've done a lot of consulting in the past. It's fun work. You get to really flex your brain in all these different problems, use cases. It's good stuff. All right, man. As we wrap up, this has been great. So thanks for hanging out. Final 2 questions, and the listeners will be very familiar with them. I keep them the same every week. They are intentionally vague. But first question is, what is one widely held belief that marketers believe to be true that you think is bullshit or no longer serving us?
It's probably obvious at this point, but doing SEO. So I'd say too many people, they start with the default of, I need to do SEO. How do I do it? I'd say start with the default of, these are the channels in front of me. I could do paid, I could do social, I could do outbound, I could do billboards, I could do any of these things. I could do SEO. Justify which one you're going to do. Don't start with this default of like, I have a marketing team, I'm building out a marketing muscle. I have to do SEO. How am I going to do it? I have to do paid. How am I going to do it? I don't think you have to do anything. You don't have to do paid. You don't have to do billboards, and you certainly don't have to do SEO. If you're going to do SEO, build out and justify why you're going to do SEO. Build out that model and then do SEO. And this, I think, is even more important for startups who are resource constrained. Don't invest in that channel that potentially isn't going to drive any value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of like, if you're going to do it, do it properly, resource it the right way, build the team around it, give it enough time. I feel like there is sort of a marketing template that early stage companies follow, and oftentimes that's spreading themselves too thin, and they're doing 15% of what they could be doing across all the different channels instead of just going in and owning one or two channels. So I think that's great advice. Second question, as we wrap up, everyone is looking for something to implement right away that's going to help them move the needle. Everything takes time. There's no silver bullets. But what is one tactic or strategy that's working for one of the companies you're advising for right now?
It's going to be so obvious, but I always tell companies just ask customers some questions. And, always, whenever I talk to marketers, like, ask your customer, what is it they're doing? How would they find you? And they're like, we did, but they're wrong. And the customer is always right. There's a company I just started working with. They're like, we're producing all this content and we asked our users and they don't like it. So they're wrong. So if you assume the customer is always right, the buyer is always right, it's just so obvious, but just like email a single customer and do a little survey and you'll unlock these amazing insights. You don't need to do a survey that gives you, statistical significance on 1,000 people. It's really just ask a customer, how did you find us? This is something we all do it when you buy something online. It's like, how did you find us? Some people lie, some people don't. So ask that simple question. And I do it like when I'm talking to salespeople and trying to help them crystallize what their marketing should be. It's like, when you're talking to customers, just add that one piece in and say, how did you find us? And if you discover how they found you, that's what you want to invest in. So a company I was talking to very recently, they make electrical transformers and they were investing $10,000 a month in SEO. And I was like, has anybody ever come to you from that? They're like, we don't know. So I said, just for next time you're on the phone, ask them how they found you. And they did. Someone told them. There was a referral. So I'm like, that's the channel you invest in. All of your customers are coming from referrals and you're spending $10,000 a month on SEO. That makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. I like it. A simple but actionable piece of advice, I would say. Yeah. How they found you. And then maybe one more on top of that of like, what's the most valuable resource that we've created that your team actually uses for kind of, the more bottom of the funnel?
Yeah, actually, I have a great story there. And this is the technical SEO. We don't really talk about this at all. But I think technical SEO, it can be very expensive and should be absolutely justified because it's expensive. Two actually stories. One was an early consulting engagement where I underpriced and I beat out a mega agency that had wanted to charge $50,000 a month to basically give PowerPoints every month. And one of the things they did for this company, it was a public company, was they said how slow their page speed was. And they wanted to improve their page speed by having them build more data centers. And this company was about to invest $2 million into more data centers. And I just walked them through this simple exercise of like, let's say we invested $2 million. What's our perceived improvement in SEO conversion? And they're like, well, how do you figure that out? And I'm like, well, if we can't figure it out, don't spend the $2 million. And it wasn't. This is a company that had, obviously they have data centers. They're pretty fast. So there was not going to be any more SEO improvement. And they were in B2B. So there certainly wasn't, they weren't going to convert anybody more. The other example, again, this is sort of technical. When I was at SurveyMonkey, we invested 2 years of time into creating TLDs for Europe. So we created a .co.uk and a .de. And I went to, again, I love people and learning from people. And part of my role was meeting customers and asking them questions. So I went to the UK and I had a bunch of meetings with some of our bigger and smaller customers. And I asked each of them how meaningful it was to them that we had a .co.uk. Were we less of an American company because we had .co.uk and we changed our English on the .co.uk to be British English? None of them even knew. They never noticed. So we spent all this time and we had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great examples of make sure you can quantify and you back up these huge changes you're making that you perceive are valuable that might not move the needle whatsoever. That's awesome. Well, Eli, thank you. This has been awesome. Certainly got my gears turning. I love conversations like this that get the creative juices going. But appreciate you, man. And for all our listeners, I say it every week. Listing's one thing, executing is totally different. So hopefully we spurred some ideas for scaling your company and scaling your career. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Scott.